Well, hey, folks, welcome to the Daily Evolver, and especially to those of you who are showing up here live today. It's really nice to spend some time with you. I do my fireside chats for the Integral Life community on the first and third Wednesdays of every month, starting at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, yeah, the culture just continues to evolve. I wanted to focus today on the movie Barbie that is getting a lot of attention. And it is a cultural phenomena, as is, of course, Barbie the doll. But the culture is really eating up this movie. It's just had its second week of being the top film globally. It's on its way to $1 billion box office. And the movie is fascinating, I think, and worthy of cultural significance as well. It's a very green movie. And I don't say that as an insult. I say that as an appreciator of green art. And I'll make that case as we move through here. First of all, as I said, Barbie is, the doll, is one of the most important and culturally significant brands in history. They've sold 1 billion Barbie dolls. There's only not even 8 billion people on the planet. So that's 1,000 million Barbie dolls out there. And I don't think they, I don't think they're recyclable. They're just all there. In 150 countries, very diverse. They sell 86 million a year. It's huge on social media. There's billions of hours of content on Barbie on social media. And that's what everybody knows. What's, I think, significant from a developmental point of view is that Barbie's also one of the most developmentally significant brands in history. It's because Barbie represents a bright line in the development and installation of modern consciousness over traditional consciousness. We move from traditional to modern to postmodern, hopefully to integral. And Barbie charts and is a symbol, an archetype of the move into modernity. And this is a point that is made very powerfully in the very first scene. And it's really quite wonderful and impactful. And it's a parody of 2001: A Space Odyssey, the Kubrick film. And it starts by showing a vast landscape. And instead of the monkeys on the landscape, it's a bunch of little girls playing with dolls. And Helen Mirren is the narrator. And Helen Mirren comes on and talks about, for all time, there's been little girls playing with dolls. And this is, of course, the world of traditionalism, where the dolls were all baby dolls. And the little girls are, feeding them and playing with them and holding them and singing to them. And this is the world of traditionalism, where motherhood was a sacred imperative. It was venerated. And, babies were women's contribution to the society. It meant strength. For the family, it meant, having a bunch of kids to work on the farm. It meant having some social security when you got old, somebody to take care of you. And it meant strength for a culture. And this was the role of women. And this is the role of women for all of history, where brute force mattered. If we look at the earlier stages of history in terms of hunting, it was the men, with some exceptions, and there's some controversy around that, but it was the men. And the women took care of the householder stuff, the food, the meat, the gathering. As we move into agriculture and plows and a more complex society, there was a differentiation in the world between the public and private or family world. And men were in the public world, women in the private world. This is the beginning of the patriarchy. And the patriarchy is a big theme in this Barbie movie. And surprisingly so, in a way. I mean, it surprised me just how much green has yet to fluoresce in the society, and how the young people, you know, all around me, I saw it twice actually, and they're just eating it up. And so with the advent of modernity, where brute strength is no longer the rule of the day, we have engines, you know, we don't have to walk beyond plows, we don't have to carry water anymore. In a few generations, children went from being an economic benefit to being an economic liability. And this, you know, the pivot point was the, you know, maybe the mid 20th century. And this was the entree of Barbie in 1959, where a new kind of doll comes on the scene. And it exemplifies this new world where women have options outside of the home. And, you know, from evolution's point of view, there's all kinds of sociology and the gender wars, and there's endless interest about this, rightly so. But from evolution's point of view, it was time for the sacred imperative of motherhood to be transcended. Now, ideally, in an integral, we want to transcend and include. In fact, that's the integral project, is including the best of the previous stages of development in ways that, you know, as we move up this, as we grow, we tend to transcend and exclude. We become so sick of the values of the society that we're living in. It's just built into us, you know, and we reject them and all they hold dear. And so this then is the next move in this movie, where in 2001, it was the obelisk appears to the monkeys, you know, this new knowledge, this new thing. And in this case, it's Margot, this is with the music of Wagner and Thus Spake Zarathustra, suddenly appears Margot Robbie, 30 feet tall. And, you know, I'll get to more of Margot Robbie in a second. She's terrific. But there she is, 30 feet tall, wearing the original black and white V-shaped one-piece swimsuit and high heels. That was the first Barbie. And the girls are all, they look, and they're just entranced by this new, you know, appearance of this new doll. And they leave their babies to sort of touch her feet and look at her and worship her in a certain way. And then suddenly, they turn on their babies and smash their heads against the rocks. And it's hysterical in a way, but it is just emblematic of how every stage wants to trash the values of the previous one, and modernity did with traditionalism. And so then we enter the world of Barbie Land, where, you know, it's all pink and beautiful, and that first scene is over. And of course, there's no children. It's all adults. It's many forms of Barbie. There's the Barbies, and then there's the Kens. And the Barbies are the girl dolls, and the Kens are the boy dolls. Although there's a trans Barbie, the trans doctor the doctor is a trans actor. And you know, I have seen criticism that the movie is, you know, anti-mother. It is in the sense that it's anti-traditional. It's anti-patriarchy too. We'll get to that in a second. But there was a criticism that Namala, you sent me yesterday that somebody posted on Facebook. And this woman wrote, she said, the opening scene of Barbie, where the little girls begin to literally angrily smash the heads of their baby dolls against the rocks in an act of violent rejection of motherhood, absolutely plays with horrid precision. And I looked around astounded at how many little girls were watching this alongside me. They were smashing the head of their dolls as Barbie winks at them in a manner that, if you want to read too much into it, can feel malicious. The girls would abandon their vision of motherhood in the names of pursuing high-end, respectable roles. I don't blame Barbie. She's a manifestation of the times when women in general are more disconnected from the feminine nature, more masculine than ever, and statistically more unhappy than ever. The dream we were sold, climbing up social hierarchies is going to make us happy, is going to be statistically faulty. And I think that's an interesting criticism. And I think that criticism could be coming from an integral perspective. It's not necessarily an argument for going back to traditionalism. It's an argument for not leaving the values of traditionalism completely behind. But it turns out that in a way, the movie is not anti-mother, it's anti-traditional mother, where again, motherhood is the only option, the sacred imperative for women. But it actually features very heavily a mother-daughter relationship where the mother's played by America Ferrara, who is also wonderful. And she has a teenage daughter. And this is sort of an example of postmodern motherhood. And I think one of the lines that sort of really transmits that is, of course, the daughter is a surly teenager and just can't be pleased in any way, shape, or form. And she, at one point, tells her mother, "Don't look at me." And the mother says, "I'm sorry." So there's postmodern motherhood for you. It's where the sensitivity of the child is, the child is the center of the world. We could talk about that. It's probably another podcast. But this teenage girl, Sasha, is very interesting. And again, she speaks for she's what, 14? So when she encounters Barbie, she tells Barbie, "You've created a world where men hate women and women hate each other. You are a crypto-capitalist fascist." And, it's very much this sort of depressive green sensibility and affect that, this is the movie, even though it tells a story of women moving into modernity, it does it from a postmodern point of view. And the human portion of the show, there's the Barbie Land, and then there's the real world, which is contemporary LA. It comes from very much a postmodern worldview. And I found it interesting in that way because it is charting these developmental moves. And good art does. I mean, that's often a theme of good art. But also, it has another sort of evolutionary theme to it, in that Barbie herself is awakening to self-consciousness. So she starts to have thoughts about death and anxiety. And I wish I could say that she learned something about them, and she learned something about love and the meaning of life. She doesn't really, but, and this is to go back to Margot Robbie, thank God for her, because she's so good. And it just makes me think about great actors and great performers in general, and we've all seen them, whether it's on stage or in movies. It transmits very much through movies, where they are not just acting, but they're transmitting a sort of a liquid energy. And Margot Robbie has that X factor. She's a star. And her Barbie, it's just the perfect casting. And in fact, they make fun of it at one point because they're talking, of course, as women in the current reaction against the patriarchy talk about, we always have to be pretty and we're not pretty enough. And in that point, Helen Mirren, as the narrator, breaks in and says, "This isn't really a great point to make when you've cast Margot Robbie as the star." And that's so true. So she's so great. But what the movie revolves around is a pretty much a zero-sum struggle between the Barbies and the Kens. And the Barbies in Barbie Land, they're this is again accurate cultural critique, if you will. The Barbie's the president, the Barbies are the Supreme Court, the Barbies are the astronauts, the Barbies are the doctors, the Barbies basically run the show. And Ken's job, all the Kens, and there are many of them, they just kind of hang out at the beach. Their job is to do beach, and they do beach as a verb, and they talk about beaching each other off. And it's kind of funny, but I keep thinking, is that the best you could do? But at any rate, I'm a fan of Greta Gerwig, I have to say, as a filmmaker, for the most part. I'm not a fan of Little Women. I loved Lady Bird, and I love her as an actress in Frances Ha. She's a writer and director of the show. So anyway, there's this big struggle between the Barbies and the Kens, and Barbie's trying to go back to the real world. And you know, I can't get into too much plot. This is all unfolding in the first few minutes, so it's not like I'm giving much away, except that it doesn't really much go anywhere. And I wish they had, you know, I mean, this is my sort of always a problem as a patron of these arts, if you will, is that I wish there was an integral sensibility. I wish there was some more of an integral sensibility that would recognize the stages of development and the stages of relationship between men and women at each stage of development, and how men and women self-organize at each stage of development in ways that optimize the flourishing of the culture, that women participate in this just as they still do in patriarchal societies around the world. Women are often the enforcers, particularly in terms of family life and keeping their kids home and keeping their girls from being, you know, too revealing, and keeping the, you know, boys macho. And that's something that has happened, and that we have an evolutionary process now that through modernity and into postmodernity is basically creating a larger circle of capacity for every individual human being to inhabit the whole range of masculine and feminine behaviors. That's a wonderful story. That's the evolutionary story. It's true that for most of human history until modernity, the strong dominated the weak. Men are physically stronger than women. That has been a big factor, but women have had all kinds of agency within this bigger structure. And I'm actually a little confused about this myself. So I'm interested in what you have to say, and we'll do some small groups and we'll do some sharing a little bit. But I want to just point out the there's a famous monologue in Barbie, already famous. People are talking about it. It'll be taught in schools. And this is America Ferrera's monologue about what it is to be a woman. And I read an article where she and Greta Gerwig were talking about that they spent 2 days making this. They did somewhere between 40 and 50 takes, and they got it just right. And I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I'll just read some of it. And this is America Ferrera, as you know, she's the mother in this real world mother-daughter relationship. And she's talking about, it is literally impossible to be a woman here in 2023. Like, we have to always be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but you also have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. I love this one. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much. Or you threaten other women because you're supposed to be part of the sisterhood. But always stand out, always be grateful. Never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard. It's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out that, in fact, you are not only doing everything wrong, but everything is also your fault. I'm tired of watching myself and every other single woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us. And if that's true also for a doll just representing women, she's talking to Barbie, then I don't even know what to say. So that's the complaint of women in this movie. I don't think it's wrong, actually. I think that is the stage of development where we're at. And in this fallen and world of dukkha and suffering, that's a reasonably accurate description of the grievance side of the street. So anyway, on Twitter, this woman, Megan Daum, who I've never heard of, but she rewrote this speech for men. So I'll just read a little bit of this. This is in response to Barbie's not, of course, in the movie. She writes, "It's literally impossible to be a man. Like, we always have to be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You're supposed to be good looking for women, but not so good looking that you seem unserious or vain, though nothing's more important than being tall. You have to have money. You should earn it and keep earning it. You have to be a boss, but you can't be seen to be a bully or as insensitive or old-fashioned or, quote, just not getting it. You have to be in touch with your feminine side, but also be the protector. You have to answer for women's bad behavior, which is insane, like sometimes literally insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of not listening, not caring enough, or of gaslighting. You have to win at the game while making sure to say that you know the system is rigged in your favor. You have to say this even if it's not rigged anymore, or at least doesn't feel that way. Or maybe it is rigged, which means you don't actually deserve anything you've ever gotten, but you got it anyway. Or maybe you didn't. But in either case, you have to be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never cross a boundary without permission. It's too dangerous. It's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. As it turns out, in fact, not only are you doing everything wrong, but everything is actually your fault." So that's the men's retort, actually written by a woman. And again, I don't think it's necessarily inaccurate, but it's one side of the street. And where, to me, Barbie failed is in telling more of that kind of story, where we can see that both sides have their grievances, and that the trajectory of evolution is to include the qualities of masculine and feminine to every individual. That's been happening. It's happening now. It's not only happening now in terms of options, but it's happening in terms of gender and fluidity and, trans. And, this is the new sort of expansion of identity that evolution is bringing to the party. And that all along, there have been men and women, both, who have bucked the system. And, I remember Barbie coming on. It's 1959, so I'm 5 years old. And I remember I grew up with lots of kids, lots of friends and church and big extended family, not to mention school chums. And the girls had Barbies. And oh, how I wanted to play with the Barbies, but I knew I couldn't. And I didn't. But that's, I actually think I would be a better person today if I had been allowed to express that nurturing part of me. And, fashion, for God's sakes. I mean, Barbie came out not so much as an astronaut or, physicist, although she went there as modernity continued to come online. But at first she came on as a fashion doll. And the idea was you'd buy all these clothes and these outfits for Barbie. And I remember it very well. I also remember that people would make little outfits, and my friends' mothers would make little outfits. And I so wanted to make little outfits for Barbie, but I couldn't. So that's part of the story too, that is completely, Ken, played by Ryan Gosling, is vacant. Every other character in Barbie Land has no real interiority. Besides Barbie, and what's happening to Barbie is she's developing interiority. She's becoming human. And this is sort of the aesthetic of green. And we've talked about it before, with especially with the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. One of the ways of talking about the green aesthetic, and again, I like the green aesthetic often, is that it's surface without depth. So you get lots of eye candy, and this movie is full of it. I mean, it's Barbie and pink and pastels and these little cars and Barbie's dream house, and everything's kind of got a varnish, and the dolls are a little bit mechanical. Barbie is at first. She gets more fluid as she goes. And Ken is completely vacant. And, Ken goes for the power. Of course, everything's reduced to power in green. There's no narratives of history that are acceptable. Even progress is not acceptable. And so what's left is we're ratcheted down because green dissolves orange and blue or amber, so dissolves modernity and traditionalism. So we're left then with red. And so it's like, who's got the power? Who's winning? And maybe there's, the message can be, and there's a sort of message of you can be all you can be. That's sort of a modern message that survives the deconstruction. And at the end, that's where Barbie gets this transmission from the originator of Barbie, Ruth Marcus, who is played by Rhea Perlman. And, that she can sort of be anything she wants to be. And that's it. And, that is the modern, that's the realization of modernity. It's actually huge evolutionary progress, that you don't just have to be obedient to your group or your God, that you can actually express yourself. And that's huge in the development of humanity, but it's not the end. So anyway, there's lots of plot, but at the end, the Barbies win back and Ken is defeated. And so it's funny, I saw the movie twice and I was trying to remember, how does it actually end? What actually do at the end? There's no real resolution or anything. Of course, that's green. You can't rest. Even the humor and punchlines are very meta. Everything is from an ironic distance. And of course, this is a Mattel production. And so, Mattel didn't do this for nothing. And so they show the executives, and it's Will Ferrell and all these, kind of stiff, priggy, mostly white guys. And so anyway, but at the end, so I looked, because I couldn't remember how it ended. I looked on Google, how did Barbie end? And here it is, I'll read it to you. Despite all the chaos, because it came back to me, how sort of anticlimactic it was, but here it is. Despite all the chaos he caused, Barbie comforts Ken after Kendom goes down in flames. Ken admits he actually became uninterested in the patriarchy when he realized it wasn't just about horses. Barbie apologizes to Ken for taking him for granted. So there you go. That's the end. I hope I didn't give it away. But no love, no future. It's like Seinfeld, another great example of green storytelling. No hugging, no learning. And that's very much this. Barbie becomes human in the most uninteresting way, actually, but it's funny. Then I will give that away. So that's my thoughts on Barbie. And so what I'm interested in hearing from you, and I want to break into small groups here, and I'd like you to share, what's the state of it now? I mean, where's the patriarchy? How does it manifest? The war between the sexes, even the gender fluidity. What do you see happening? And if you've seen the movie, you might share a little bit about it. But so let's break into groups of three. Are we back? All right. Well, I'm interested in hearing from you. If you have any comments or questions, raise your hand and we will entertain them. And as you're thinking about that, or you can put stuff in the chat as well. So let's start with Levi.
I have a question. Like, I saw the film and I must say I didn't really like it. But one of the things that I didn't like about it, because we have the Barbie world and we have reality. And in the Barbie world, everything is a bit of a caricature. So every day is the best day you ever had. And there's everything, all the men are stupid and all the women run everything. It would have been interesting, I think, if the real world would have not been just a mirror image of that, but also more complex. So you can say we have a caricature world and we have a complex world.
Hmm.
So that dichotomy is completely lost, because as soon as Barbie goes to the real world, yeah, we kind of get a caricature patriarchy, just as, yeah. So I wonder what you would think of that. Would that maybe make the film a little bit more integral, or?
Yeah, again, there's way more story to tell, but one of the characteristics, and this is theory, which I don't live or die on this, but that all first tier memes, so that would be green, orange on down, if you will, divide the world into us and them, and that it is a struggle. And there's some ways in which that's accurate, and green is no exception. Green is not diverse in terms of worldview. It's diverse in terms of, if everybody's sort of progressive and more, then you can be green. But if you're traditional or modern in any meaningful sense, then that's not okay. And what continues to amaze me is just how potent a message that is. And how many people are at the stage where they want and need to hear it, I guess. All the teenagers who love it, and the stuff on Twitter, and you'd think America Ferrera's speech was, Dostoevsky. But there we have it. And I think everybody ought to wake up. I don't know, maybe I've been in Boulder too long. I've been doing this sort of postmodern thing for a long time. It's just, in some ways, even without integral, I'm bored with it. But apparently not. There's more to go. I mean, every stage continues to evolve horizontally, if you will. So we get more rational too. We get more, that traditional thing is coming online back, the neo-traditionalists and so forth. That's interesting. And green still has more to install. So I don't know. I'm rambling, but it's something like that. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mark, what's up?
So I really like that thing that you read off about the problems that men face. And if somebody wants to be better educated about that, there's a movie called The Red Pill, where it started out with a woman who wanted to do a movie about how bad men were. And she ended up doing a movie on how difficult life is for men.
Yeah.
And she ended up calling it The Red Pill, and it's based in this extensive interviews with Warren Farrell in it, who was also on Integral Naked years and years ago.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Cool. Yeah. And red pill has become part of the lexicon of,
well, it hasn't been with respect to men's issues. It's generally about life in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Where you're waking into the deeper structures of what's going on and how we're all being manipulated and whatever. But, what I would say is, I guess I alluded to it, is just life is difficult. It's been difficult. It's difficult. And there's just to use the Buddhist terminology, there's a way out of that suffering, which is to awaken into the part of yourself that is beyond this time and space. Christianity does the same thing. And so you can see that world, that absolute reality, is interpenetrated with everything, and its nature is goodness, truth, and beauty. That's I'm not sure society's ready for that. There's a leading edge of people who are in various ways, but that's not going to be the mass culture. And think about this movie too. This movie is huge in China. You know, they're coming from a way more traditional center of gravity that, you know, we're prepared for this kind of stuff. It's remarkable. And this is evolution at work, to see the mass global culture and how young people are drinking it up. So, you know, welcome to evolution, not only happening, but accelerating.
You say you really like the green aesthetic, and I really agree with that. I also really like the aesthetic, but I feel like even though green, of course, will always be here, it will always stay here. But there was a moment when green felt more urgent and it felt more important. For example, if I listen to the protest songs of the 1960s, or if I watch the postmodern films by Jean-Luc Godard, I still love those films even now, because I felt like they were made exactly at the right time. And so I feel like even though in a theoretical sense, Barbie might be a good green movie, still it misses for me this urgency or this momentum that just I feel like it should have been made 60 years ago, and then it would have been great. But now it feels like
I get it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree with you, and it's a opportunity to do what we can do with every new stage of development, if you will, and that is to see that there's the good green and there's the bad green. And what's the good green is that there is still, you know, men run things and, you know, politics and boardrooms of whatever. But there's also a realization. It's like the comment from Namali, your friend, that you sent, that there's a feminine energy, there's a feminine spirit where there is a difference between men and women, and it's not dispositive for any particular individual, but there is something to be said about that and to integrate that. And this movie misses all of that. So it's not really taking us anywhere. You're right. There's no new realization in this movie that we didn't have in the first stages of feminism, really. In fact, in some ways, it's more located in the first stages of feminism than it is now. But that's where I guess a lot of people are, you know, I don't know, especially young people. You know, we have to remember that people are growing through these stages, and you can't force it. And, you know, and in some ways, and this is something I realize the older I get, is that young people are supposed to be angry. You know, that's sort of evolutionarily potent. You know, they're supposed to see what's wrong. That's evolutionarily potent. Good news might be great, but bad news could kill you. So, you know, people are focused on that. That's just part of the deep structure. I do think that changes as we move into integral and we move from a fear-based system to a creativity or love-based system. You know, I won't get there with you, but I can see the promised land. So anyway, thanks, Levi. Carolyn.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, I haven't seen the movie. I probably want to now see it more than I did last week, having heard your presentation, Jeff. But the one thing that occurs to me throughout this discussion is that this movie is maybe not for tier 2 people. It was maybe meant for, you know, levels of tier 1, and helping people at tier 1 to move to realize the value of what they got out of playing with Barbie, and to now unpack some more values that are shifting them to different places where they are today. I mean, I got my Barbie doll when I was 8, 1960. I hate to admit it. And I was explaining in the group, you know, I at that time we lived next door to my grandparents on a farm. It was isolated. My grandparents were European. They were very traditional and conservative, and everything was plain and ordinary. Don't stand out. And when I got that Barbie doll for Christmas, I just remember how my world just exploded with possibility. And I daydreamed all the time about where Barbie's going to go, what we could wear, all that kind of stuff. And it's like what you said in your presentation. It just, you know, we left the baby dolls behind it, like the mothering, nurturing thing. And it helped, I know it helped me to think of another possibility for my life than the one my grandparents had set out for us. And now looking back, I can see where I'm reprocessing that all over again. Like, wow, where did that get me? And
Yeah.
but I'm really interested in how children play. And I've had my doubts about the Barbie doll over the decades, and my friends' kids who have want dolls. And they use those dolls for a lot of things, and it's really just kind of integrating what's in like real life. They're practicing through these dolls.
Yes.
And
Yes. I mean,
and I
if you're
think
thinking
that's what's
about the
happening.
baby dolls, they're practicing motherhood, they're practicing nurturing, and then they're practicing self-expression. It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. And a new kind of motherhood.
Yeah.
Like that you could be a mom and you can travel and be the CEO and you can do this and you can do that.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's so many things there. I just think for me, one of the frustrating things is to look at situations where people are in the level 3 and level 4 and life's just not working out. And I'm wishing, come on, can't you just get it?
Yeah.
It reminds me we have to be patient because everybody's got to go through the levels on their own time. And in a way, this is a kind of a movie that, well, will reach the masses. It's already reaching the masses. I think how it's going to affect the masses is yet to be determined.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And what a powerful testimonial of the power of Barbie. You at 8 years old in your farm, and that transformation that you felt when you saw Barbie for the first time, or whatever. Thank you for that. All right, Carolyn. Mary.
Every discussion I've had about this movie with anybody, whether they've seen it or not, whether they loved it or whether they hated it, I just think it's the greatest thing. And I want to take everybody to go see the movie. I've already taken lots of people to go see it. I'm so enthused about it that I almost feel like I need to curb my enthusiasm because
well, lay it on us, Mary. I mean, you don't have to worry about that with us. What do you find so exciting and enthusiastic about?
To me, the messages seemed just so pertinent and so real and so important. I think it was good what they showed for women to open up. I thought it was good. And unlike you, Jeff, I thought they did develop some space for men and their vulnerabilities. And I thought they brought that together maybe more than, but I also loved hearing your viewpoint of it because I can see it from the part of the pendulum where I'm at. And I think it's our turn right now to get some of that. But I mean, you're going to feel like it's your turn too. But I was so thrilled with the whole thing. I would say, God, look at this, what Greta's doing now. Yeah. And that this Ruth is the person that came up with it in 59. And I'll probably see it again as long as I have people who want to see it with me.
Yeah, good. I love to have my favorite movies that I see over and over. And like I said, I saw it twice and I saw way more the second time. Of course you do,
Yeah.
And I do appreciate what an achievement, actually, of just the art direction.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're out of time. All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with me and each other. And we'll see you a first and third Wednesday of every month. So we'll see you in 2 weeks.